detailed analysis of the movie Wargames, which would be good. Yeah, I heard a couple of ahs in the crowd. I thought about doing that, and then just said there's probably some kind of copyright issues or something. So what this talk is actually about is looking at CTF and Wargames in an interesting way, and we're going to take a little bit of a roundabout way to get there, but I promise it'll all make sense at the end. Or if it doesn't, you guys can yell at me instead of answering questions afterwards. So, oops. You have to actually switch the thing on if you want it to work. That's what I've learned. So as you guys know, my name is James. I'm from the U.S., particularly Atlanta, Georgia. You guys may have heard about recent, we'll just call it political things happening right now in our country. And as we found out in Dave's talk, apparently we are launching a lot of DDoSes and then receiving those DDoSes at the same time. So we have that going for us. It's all good. So today, we're going to take a little bit of a journey, so I can kind of give you some background about, how this revelation came about. And like a lot of journeys, there's going to be some failures, because you can't really have a journey without a failure. There'll be a little bit of success, and then obviously we're going to have some lessons learned, which is really what the talk's about. So, how many of you guys recognize the screenshot? Excellent. Okay, cool. I won't have to go into details about Wargames. So, I first saw Wargames when I was 7 years old. I'll give you guys a little bit of my age. And up until that point, as a 7-year-old, my career choice at the time was Jedi. I could not use the Force, which at this point I am pretty much confirmed that it's because George Lucas has some patent or copyright on all of the Star Wars stuff, and therefore we can't use the Force. That's good. So when I saw Wargames, something changed in my brain. Now, I still wanted to be a Jedi because I was 7, but the way that David Lightman's character manipulated systems, learned how, could erase phones from, phone call records, social engineered his way into the principal's office to get the password so he could change his grade. I mean, all of that was just amazing, even at 7. And I knew, at least in some part, that I wanted to be able to understand systems and computers the way that he did. The difficulty was we didn't have a computer in our house, and there was no modem, and the internet was still a distant, dream for everybody. It was there, but we didn't know how to get to it. So I got older, obviously. I'm standing here in front of you guys now. I'm not a 7-year-old. And as I became a system administrator, and as I went through, and then later would become a programmer, as you can tell from the picture up here, my view of kind of hackers and security experts, actually I think at this point they didn't even have the term security expert, it was just hackers. Everybody was a hacker, you were either good or bad. So it kind of changed. I kind of left the view of David Lightman behind, and this dark wizard of the network kind of took its place. And as a sysadmin, it was, they're going to destroy all these nice systems that I've set up and I've hardened, because we all believe we've hardened our systems to where they should be. And then when I became a programmer, I was afraid, because they would take my nice, beautifully crafted code, and they would just get it to do things in corrupt systems. This is all very scary when you're on that side of it, and you keep thinking to yourself, these guys know some dark mystical art and some secret incantation to do these things. You forget that it's based on the same things that you're using to write the code that you're writing, the same rules that apply to every machine that you're setting up. But in my brain, which is a little bit overactive as you guys can tell, I thought this is what they were doing to my beautiful stuff. So this led me to my realization. The only way that I can either defend against hackers, or I guess we'll call them the attackers. I actually like that. I like that. I'll steal that from Dave. So the only way we can defend against attackers is by learning how they do what they do. And at this point, I actually wasn't even thinking about defending. I was just like, I want to become one of those guys. They seem really cool. And I was already wearing a hoodie, so I felt like I'd fit in. So this is the traditional approach to the dark arts. This is how I've learned everything in my life. We all know we're pretty much self-taught at some level. You have to have some kind of drive to learn it. So I was like, I'm going to do that. So I started with the thing that I always start with, books. Books are amazing. You can learn anything in the world from a book. And so I took off to a bookstore. This is before the days of Amazon, when we still went to physical bookstores, and we would, at least if you're me, my pattern was kind of like this. I would walk into the bookstore, I'd immediately go to the gaming section, regardless of why I was there, and I would look to see if there was anything new, probably D&D related. And Dungeons and Dragons, for anybody who didn't catch that very nerdy reference. And then I would find my way to the section that I was interested in, which in this was just generally computers. So you would go over to the computing section, you would look through, I bought a whole bunch of books that all seemed relevant, I left, and I started reading them. And as you guys know, if you're not very good at something, most books you buy are actually crap. They're misleading, they don't really have the real information that you need, or you already know it. So where was I at the end of a month? I had read tons of books, didn't feel like I'd learned anything, and was forced to eat like Instacup noodles and ramen to pay off my credit card. Step one had failed. Books were not the answer. Luckily at this time, there was the internet. So I struck out and I jumped on IRC, I jumped on Usenet. So IRC is kind of like the old version of Slack, and Usenet is still around and you can still pretty much find anything on it. So after I jumped on IRC and Slack, or excuse me, not IRC and Slack, IRC and Usenet, I use Slack way too much these days. And then I found out, there are these mailing lists. Okay, cool. So I subscribed to a ton of mailing lists. I subscribed to all the RSS feeds that I could find, and once again, a month later, I have all this information coming in, my brain melts, and I have to just abandon the email account. It was just a lost cause. There's no way that inbox was ever getting back to zero. So step two had failed. So we've tried reading books, did get some good information. We tried going out to the internet. There was no Stack Overflow at that point, and even then, I don't think it would have helped me very much. So where do we go next? Luckily, there was training. So I worked for the university at the time. Universities, normally don't have a lot of money in the States for sending people to really expensive trainings. And I was a little bit scared because the training was really expensive. So you want to make sure you pick good training, especially if your work is paying for it. You don't want them to not ever send you to training again. And so I found something that seemed really relevant. I went to it. The class was awesome. I came out of it knowing a ton about Linux. Now, for those of you who have ever worked in a university or kind of know about the US universities, most systems in the US universities run Novell, which, raise your hands if you actually know what Novell is. Sweet, okay, that was a lot more than I was expecting. So yeah, we ran Novell servers and Windows workstations. Neither one of those actually is Linux. So, missed in a general direction there. But anyway, I was very strong in the powers of Linux, GNU be with you. And so I had somewhat succeeded, but still failed in my actual goal. So then I started thinking about it because I had run out of actual things to try, and so, all right, let's just start thinking. And I remembered, what if I could talk to an expert? So everybody recognize Bruce Schneier up here? This is a kind of a little bit of an old picture of him. He wrote a book that I read when I was a freshman in college called Applied Cryptography. Amazing book, very dense. If you love math, you will love this book. Unfortunately, I was not very good at math when I was a freshman in college, and I did not finish it. I tried again as a senior, and I like to tell people that I got through it, but let's be honest, I didn't get through the whole thing. I'll be honest with you guys, since it's just between us in the room right now. And then I started thinking to myself, well, what if I could actually talk to Bruce? I feel like I can call him Bruce in this hypothetical situation. Let's just sit down. He's a cryptography expert. Cryptography is used by everybody. What if I could sit down and talk to him and just kind of work my way through this and become a cryptography expert? And then I realized about 5 minutes into our conversation, he's going to get to some concept that's going to go right over my head. And then I'm going to have a deer caught in headlights look, and I'm going to be staring at him, and he's going to be staring at me, and it's neither one of our fault. We just can't communicate at the same level. So theoretically, if I found an expert, that would probably be out as well. And that's fine. I'm okay with just being a normal IT person. I was a pretty good sysadmin. They didn't fire me. And, turned into a decent programmer because, once again, they still haven't fired me. So that's kind of where we are. And then I started working for the company I now work for, which at the time when I started working with was called Landcope. And a friend of mine who was working there, who was actually a security researcher, took pity on me because he said, you seem to be interested in this. And he said, there's this war game happening this weekend, or excuse me, CTF happening this weekend, a capture the flag event. And given the scores that I've seen from the CTF, I think most people in the room are familiar with those, so that's going to be good. And he said, you should really play this. I think you'd have a lot of fun. And like most great advice, when you receive it, you promptly ignore it and then run your head into a brick wall 6 or 7 more times if you're as stubborn as I am. So that's what I did. I just went about the rest of my life and said, yeah, I'll totally play that, and then never did. And then we come to my discovery through Reddit. At this point, I had started subscribing to a lot of subreddits. This one actually, and for the people in the back, I'll at least enlighten you guys because I don't know if you can read it. It's from the subreddit How to Hack, and the actual wording is extracting a password from a hex dump file. Now, in my excitement, I didn't read the last and key part of that post, which is over the wire problem 13. So I thought to myself, ooh, people who are security experts and attackers, they can extract passwords from files. That's pretty cool. I should probably know how to do this, and I actually understand what all of these different components are. So I went to it, and then I discovered overthewire.org. So how many people know about Over the Wire in the room? Sweet, okay, excellent. It's a great service. We'll get into it a little bit later. But the cool thing was I found the Bandit series, which this is actually part of, and it said, Linux. I know Linux. I've done Linux for years. This is great. So I started solving the problems, and a few days later I had finished it. I think at the time, I don't know if they've added to it, but I'd finished all 26 levels. And I was blown away because this was easy. This actually, there are a couple of challenges. You had to do some reading, or find some new options in the man pages, but this was fun. So life achievement done. I was among the elite. Not really. And actually, I didn't even realize what I had discovered at this point. I was completely lost and had no idea. I just knew that I'd found something fun. I knew that I wanted to do more of it. And since I had found it on Reddit, I assumed I was the last person in the world to have discovered these things. And I was actually wrong about that. There were a lot of people like me who still did not know about it. So what actually had I found? So let's take a break from our journey at this point, and let's go into some of the details. So obviously, capture the flag. You guys, at least a lot of you know about capture the flag, just from, like I said, I've seen the scores from the CTF. And there are two types of capture the flags, and this is what I thought was interesting. There's the attack defense, which is the oldest style, and actually, what the DEF CON capture the flag event is in Vegas. And that is where you have a network, and you're trying to attack and capture machines with vulnerabilities and get points for attacking that, and then patch those vulnerabilities and defend them from the other players to maintain your points. So attack defense, pretty straightforward. The other style, which is actually my favorite style, is the Jeopardy style, which is what the CTF here is like. You have different challenges, you have different categories those challenges are in. The harder the challenge, the more points you get. You may get extra points for finishing it first. CTFs are awesome. You can play alone, you can play with a team. Really nothing to hate about it. And they're really designed in an ingenious way, because as security experts and people who are interested in this, especially in the pen testing arena, these are just little mental puzzles. You just get on, you play them, you like competing against people. Competitive nature is awesome. So they are a very valuable tool. A war game is a little bit different. It's more of a persistent online CTF, like overthewire.org. And there are different challenges, different areas you can go into. Usually it's a single player. I guess you could play with your friends, but you're still only going to have a single shell into the next puzzle. So that's, instead of finding an actual flag, you're finding the password for the next shell account. And then you move through and you get points, or internet points instead of actual competitive points. I like internet points. I like them. I covet them. So that's all great. You said you were going to talk to us about how this was an alternate method, and hope stop rambling on stage about this journey you're on. So why games? Well, games are very unique. I think we can all agree on that. But there's a specific thing about games that I want to look at in this talk. And it actually starts with this lady. Anybody out there recognize Jane McGonigal? Seen the TED Talk maybe? Excellent. So Jane McGonigal, sorry, I'm not used to having the mic by my face. Jane McGonigal wrote a book called Reality is Broken, and she gave a TED Talk talking about the same thing. The short answer is she believes that games can change the world. I think that she's right, especially because of some of my experiences. And games are fun, so any excuse that will let us tell people we are not wasting our lives playing games, use it. So I'll let you guys read this, and then we'll kind of dig into it. This is actually a quote from her book. Everybody good? I forgot to ask in the back. Everybody in the back see it? Okay. So we really are only focused on the 4 parts that make up the definition that she has a game. So this is just more of a visual representation to make that a little easier. And as you can see, we have 4 things: a goal, rules, a feedback system, and voluntary participation. And these may not make sense as to why this is actually important for us, but we'll get to it. So obviously, goals. A goal is great for 2 reasons. It is an objective that you can get to, because if it's not achievable, it's not a goal. Usually you have instructions. Obviously in Mario, everything else is kind of just additions. You get points for coins, you get points for killing bad guys, but if you don't make it to that flagpole before the clock runs out, you die, and you haven't achieved your goal. So a goal is kind of, keep that in mind when we go through the next of these, because everything is kind of pointing you back towards the goal. And when you get into CTF and Wargame challenges, that's actually one of the best things, is that you know you have a goal, you know there is a solution to this problem, you know you can finish it. It's a very big psychological win. So rules, here I am at a security conference telling you guys we should follow the rules. If you guys want to tell me I'm wrong about this afterwards, you're probably playing a much different game than I am, because if you can skip the rules in a CTF, then you definitely need to find harder challenges. And there are probably a lot of jobs out there waiting for you if you don't already have them. So this is my favorite edition of Dungeons & Dragons. This is the Player's Handbook. This is the second edition. Still the best rule set. They haven't improved on it since then. But why are rules important for us in this context of games? Well, rules create a sandbox for us. So they drive us towards the goal, because anything that violates the rules is obviously not going to get us towards what our actual goal is of finding the flag or winning the game. So we have these rules. They also can eliminate possibilities that we don't need to worry about, because once again, the rules are going to kind of give you this instruction set for moving towards your goal. So in this case, this small case, rules are important. Oh, and one last thing, rules prevent the other players from cheating. I mean, it would be terrible if you figured out the solution to a challenge and someone jumped in and just stole your answer and then pasted it in and got credit for it. That would be terrible. So rules keep us honest. And that's actually very good for learning as well, because if you're not cheating the system, then you actually are learning something. So feedback system. One of the craziest things is, you go to training, and let's say you found really good training. You go to the training, you sit in the class for, let's just say, 1 to 5 days. And when you get out, what did you learn? You probably have a lot more information, but you've had no way to apply it. You've gotten no feedback. Same thing with, taking a test. You might now get instantaneous feedback because it might be online, but in most cases you had to send it off to a teacher would grade it, and then you get it back. The great thing about games is you have an instant feedback loop. The instant feedback loop is excellent because you make through your failures, you get these small incremental improvements. So think about it. You're playing a game, you get hit by a bad guy, you take damage, you die. The next time, you might notice that there's a pattern to the way the bad guy moves. You avoid the bad guy, and you get past it, and you live. Same thing with CTFs. If I type in the wrong flag, I usually get a very hilarious message telling me that I got the wrong flag. Instant feedback. So now I can eliminate whatever possibilities I was going to use, and I can go to the next thing. Very important in games. And then my favorite, voluntary participation. How many of you guys have smashed something while playing a game? You can be honest. It's okay. A couple of you were honest. That's good. I usually do as well. I have broken at least a couple of controllers on Xbox systems, probably. So at the end of the day, no one made you play the game. No one ever makes us play games. It's not like your boss comes in and says, if you're not at level 5 by the end of the day, you're fired. That would make for, well, maybe. Maybe at Riot Games, that might be. Maybe. But we do this to ourselves. And as frustrating as games can be, especially when you are, let's say day 3 of a CTF or some wargame challenge, and you still feel no closer to finding the answer, no one made you play this, and you can quit anytime you want. But we never do. We keep playing until we beat it. And it's sad that, well, not sad. It's actually very good that we do this to ourselves, but when you think about it that way, it's very depressing. It's like, oh my God, we're doing this to ourselves. And there is something that I believe that Jane missed. Not really for what she was talking about, because she looked at very generic games, everything from single-player board games all the way up to modern video games. But there actually is a support structure for CTFs and war games, and actually in the entire security community. An amazingly helpful group of people that are very open to answering questions as long as you can ask the right questions. I mean, the reason why we get angry at the question, okay, can you teach me how to hack, is because, like, okay, what area do you want to know? Where do you want to begin? What's the first thing you want to do? It's all very nebulous. But if you can learn, the CTFs actually give you specific questions you can ask. And the best part is you're not going to get an answer, or at least you really shouldn't get a direct answer, but you'll get nudges in the right direction. So there is a very helpful structure out there to teach you. And that's great, because it's no fun just being given the answers. You want to figure it out for yourself, but at times you may need a push in the right direction, or at least a way to eliminate possibilities. Okay, so we've defined games, right? We kind of know this structure, and so what makes this structure important for us is that we can actually use it to get better awareness through gaming, particularly security awareness. And so right now I'm focusing kind of on system security and application security. Those are the two areas I'm most familiar with. But I think that there's something interesting about games because I don't know how many of you guys know Good Eats, Alton Brown, the cooking TV show, but he had one principle throughout the entire series of the show, and it was entertain first, educate second. So games entertain us. We don't realize that we're learning something until we've already learned it, which is kind of sneaky, and I like being sneaky. I always play a rogue. So we've now gotten this. So how can, I've talked to you guys about games, and you're probably thinking to yourselves, oh my God, eventually we'll get to the point, and this will be worth it, and I will. So with games, really the world didn't change when I played a game, right? It's not like I learned something new. I may have found a couple of new options, but I had a lot of the skill set that I needed to figure out these challenges. And surprisingly, you find that you may already have these skills, especially if you've been in the industry but you're not in security. You get to this point where you're embarrassed to ask something, which is kind of stupid. We should always be willing to ask things, ask questions of people. But you get to this point where you're like, maybe I should already know this. And so what happens is that games change your perception a little bit, especially in the CTF and Wargames. They get you, they just kind of give you a problem. You look at it and you're like, oh, well, I know how to do that. I can use an LS option and, that'll be great. And so, or you use grep, or you use, some other command that you may not have ever used, but you can know how to read the man page, you figure it out. And what you realize is that the world didn't change, you changed, because you changed your perception of how you're looking at the problems. This is great for people who are not in security, because you can actually make them better because they become aware of security. And the reason that this happens is because humans are amazing pattern matching machines. That is how we've survived. That thing over there is food, that thing over there is going to kill me. Simple, very simple, but that's what we do. We are able to do this, and we keep records of these in our head. And so what you're doing when you're playing these games, even if you are in security, is you're exposing yourself to these patterns, these kind of repetitious things, and then when you see it out in the wild, your brain recognizes it. And so what you're doing as you play more and more of this, you're ingraining these patterns into your head, you're improving your pattern recognition for vulnerabilities. And what's funny is when you start getting developers to play CTFs, they start seeing things in their code where they're like, wait, that doesn't seem right, because I remember seeing something similar to that on Smash the Stack, and that ended badly for that program. So it's kind of one of the things I didn't see coming was the pattern recognition. And finally, and this is once again important for everybody, is that once you kind of understand these things, and I think that's the problem with most sysadmins and most devs that have no formal training or are not exposed to this, they're kind of in the unknown. It's like, no, that's the security guy's job. They'll figure it out, and then they'll let me know what I need to fix. But as they start becoming familiar, and as they become aware of these things through playing games where they don't realize they're learning anything, they start taking ownership of the problem. They start seeing the bugs. They start realizing that maybe they should do something a little bit better, and it happens without policy and without training and without a lot of other things. They do it on their own. And when you learn to do something on your own, you take a great amount of pride and ownership in it, and that's something that's amazing. So now we know why games work, because they provide us the structure to play in. I've made an attempt to express a theory. Hopefully you guys are still with me. If not, the rest of this is going to go downhill. So the journey continues. Where we left our intrepid hero, he had just discovered that he could play war games and possibly learn about security. Fast forward 2 years later, and in theory, I am an adult. My wife would argue that point. My daughter constantly argues that point. And as you can see from this picture, I have made some excellent life choices, including dyeing my hair pink to further the security cause of my company. Too long of a story to get into now, just let's say that it was very recent, if you guys can see that my hair is still pink up top. It was worth it. But the regrets that I have on this journey is that I am still not a Jedi. Disney now has the rights to the patents and copyrights, so you guys can't use the Force because of Disney. I apologize. I'm pretty sure that's somehow our fault. But what I have learned is this. It's very fun to play games. I mean, we play games all the time. I play board games with my daughter all the time, but when I can play CTFs and I play this stuff, it's actually exposed me to a lot more knowledge than I thought that I had, and actually exposed knowledge that I've forgotten that I had, but now I'm using in different ways. And as you can tell from my job title, I'm still a software engineer, but I do dabble quite a bit in the security arena, and that's actually one of the reasons why I'm here talking to you guys today, which I'm very grateful for. Because now that leads me to my ask. So you guys didn't think you were going to go away for free. This will require a little bit of audience participation. So how many people, I know we saw some answers earlier, but how many people are professionally in security right now? Okay, sweet. Okay, and so for the rest of you guys, if you are, like, let's say students, as you call them, the regular IT peoples, or developers, for you guys, play more games. Definitely play more CTF and Wargames. Because, we can play games all day, but if we don't play the right kind of games, it's not going to help us. But you'll be surprised, especially if you've been in the industry or you're getting into the industry, or any IT-related industry, how much you will learn from these. I was actually shocked at how much I learned. And it's a lot of fun, and you can then go to your boss and say, I was playing games all weekend, but don't worry, it was good for me. And look at their confused look and then go about your business. Now, for the people who are actually in the security industry, you guys have a much harder task. You have to convince your friends that are not in security to play these games. Because that's actually how we make everybody better. We really can't do it all ourselves. And especially with, let's say if I can remember this fact, in the next 5 to 10 years, I believe, I think it may be 5 years, there's going to be 10 billion devices online. Those devices are going to have somewhere in the neighborhood of 5 to 10 sensors in them. So let's just, make the math easier, we'll round up to 10. So that's 100 billion sensors that are going to be online in the next 5 years. So let's get that back to software. They're all running something. At that point, we do have the connected Hamilton Beach toaster. My refrigerator probably can talk to everything else in my house, and at some point are probably launching a DOS against my computers because they're trying to control the network. This is the future we're in. We need as much help as we can get, and it would ideally start with being able to have sysadmins who have this knowledge, have this awareness, and can harden systems really well, and actually feel like they know what they're doing when they harden the systems. And the same thing goes for developers. You want developers to stop adding, cross-site scripting vulnerabilities or buffer overflows. I know I do. I would like to stop writing them any day now. I will do it. I am getting better, and that's the thing is what we found is so are the people that we expose to this. They're understanding, they're actually going out of their way, even though they know it's a lot more work, to fix these things. So convince the people that you know in your circle to play more games. So this leads us to where I get to use my psychology degree professionally. I have one, and my parents said, "What the hell are you thinking?" And I said, "Don't worry, it's going to work out. I have a feeling that 15 years from now, I will be in front of a stage using my psychology degree for something." Maybe not that accurate, but here's where we are. So why should people play these, and why should you guys who are actually not in the security industry, why should you be playing these games? I'm going to convince you guys. So is anybody out there a fan of tabletop? Because I stole this from Will Wheaton. Okay, excellent. So an infection vector is something that gets you to do something else. So he uses Ticket to Ride as an infection vector to introduce people to board games. And I thought that was genius. And so I said, okay, well, how can we use CTF and Wargames as an infection vector to get people more security awareness? You start with eliminating their fear. So guys who have not played a CTF yet, it's just a game. That's it. So what are you waiting for? There's no prize except for you get this great sense of pride and this amazing sense of accomplishment. If you fail, who cares? You're not any worse at your day job. It has no impact on the rest of your life. It's just a game, and it's fun, so you should play it. As I said before, it's fun. I mean, you guys remember going down the slide as a kid? That was awesome, right? So if you're going to play something that's fun, has a very low barrier of entry, why not do it? I mean, you can only get better, right? Okay, and then for the last point, this is my daughter. It took me 20 minutes to get this photo of her, but she finally agreed to close her eyes and let me take a picture. So, because it was so hard for her, I want everybody in the audience to close their eyes for a second. I promise there's no tricks. This is just an exercise. This is where I can actually convince you guys that you should be playing these games. So, think back to the very first game that you played. Okay? I mean, I know that I can still remember it immediately. Think about the feeling that you had the second that you actually started to make progress in that game, that you realized you were getting better at it. Remember that feeling. Remember how awesome it felt the first time you won that game. I mean, it could be a board game, it could be a video game, anything. But that feeling is what drives you forward. That's what keeps you pushing when things go wrong. Okay, everybody open their eyes. So, you guys want to play games right now, don't you? See? I told you it'd work. That leads us down to questions. Anybody have any questions, really? Anything? Sweet, you guys are gonna make it. Yeah, you guys are gonna make it easy on me.
Yeah, it's going to be someone right here.
Let me not knock off my mic. That would be bad.
Just knocked everything over.
Where can I start?
Oh yeah, excellent. That's a great question. So there actually are two answers. It depends on which side you want to get into. Let's say if you're interested in reverse engineering, the place I would recommend is Smash the Stack, smashthestack.org, I believe. And the reason why I would suggest that is because it actually starts out showing you the source code, so you can look and read through the source code and then attempt things, and it's a great way to start. And then eventually you get to where they just give you a binary, and you actually have to learn how to reverse engineer it. So it's a great introduction. Once again, very low barrier of entry. The other side of that's more systems-based, and actually with some cool cryptography challenges, is overthewire.org. Those are the two main ones. And then from there, it is quite literally a rabbit hole of every CTF event that's coming up. You can play them remotely, and it's just find what challenges you like, and then occasionally throw in something that you don't know just to kind of stretch your limits. But yeah, those are the two places I recommend everybody start, just because it's easy to get into, and a great skill set. Here, I'll throw that up. Anything else? Yes, sir.
We don't lag.
If you would like to design like a custom war game for our internal organization with some light exercises, get started, is there some good service or something that you can help you get it quick started, or do we have to start from scratch ourselves?
Yeah, so what I would do there's a lot of like frameworks that you can set up to set up kind of more capture the flag challenges. We're looking at doing something internally. We were at when you get acquired, things kind of fall off to the wayside, and you have to figure out where it fits into the big equation. But we were actually looking at setting this up for all of our devs for our internal product, StealthWatch, because it's we all work on it, but we don't know how the users use it in many cases, or we know how they use one portion. And so we wanted to set up this thing where you analyze NetFlow, and you did that. And so that's what we were working through. And a lot of it was actually more capture the flag, where we just had different challenges. It's like, take this, analyze this traffic, and we had something emitting traffic. And that's kind of where we we had everything laid out, and we just need to build it. But yeah, that's what I would do, is look for a framework. If you want to, you can, I know that Over the Wire has the ISOs or VMs that you can actually download from them that actually have their entire series of games. So you could start with one of those because they're very locked down, and then add your own challenges, hide the keys, and then set it up however you wanted to. But yeah, something, look at any of the frameworks online. I can't remember the name of the one that I used for a portable CTF that I carried around DEF CON last year, but it was Python based, had like a Flask front end to the web serving, and worked really well. I can look it up.
Shepherd is actually a good one. The OWASP Security Shepherd. Easy to set up, only web-based.
Yeah.
It's good.
Yeah, I was going to say, and I can look up the other one and let you guys know. Yeah, cool.
Anyone else?
I was going to say thank you guys for listening, and thanks to the organizers for bringing it out here. This is my first trip to Sweden, so I'm very excited to be here today and have had a blast. So thank you.
Have